educational qualifications such as PhD, MBA in Finance, MCom, BCom, CFA of United States Level 1 passed, NET and SET passed in Commerce and Management. Their objective is to work for students' overall development and contributing towards social development through academic research, fulfilling the duty of a responsible citizen of the nation. Presently working as assistant professor in Department of Commerce at Bharati Vidyapeeth, deemed to be university, Yashwantrao Mohte College of Arts, Science and Commerce since 25th February 2020. Their PhD awarded on 10th of September 2020 by Kavitri Bhainabai Chaudhary, North Maharashtra University, Jalgaon. The university sponsored projects, there are two. One is the role of private equity firms in promotion of entrepreneurship through MSME funding in Pune region. Second, a study of implication of economic crisis on startups in Pune. Also, there are two numbers of project. One is financial statement analysis of ancillary industry. Second is performance of small scale industry in Indian context. There are national and international level research papers, publications up to 17 and 20 FDP workshop, conference, orientation and refresher programs have been attended. Guest lectures and expert talks also provided by sir, and they have professional teaching experience of more than 11 years. So I humbly request Dr. Patil Sirji to give us to start the lecture, to start the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Ma'am, please just check my camera. I think there is some issue with it. It's not that much clear. So I would like to ask students, is it okay if I keep my camera switch off?
No problem, sir. You can switch off the camera.
Oh, okay.
No
Okay, no
problem, sir.
problem. Thank you. Thank you. Just give me a minute's time. Okay. So, good evening, everyone. First of all, I am thankful to Dr. Archana Mari ma'am for giving me an opportunity to be here for the expert talk on formulation of hypothesis in PhD coursework 2024. So, before we start this session, let me just have a quick poll. You just need to raise hand. There is an option on your screen, raise an option. So how many of you are aware that what is hypothesis and how we need to deal with this? Just raise your hand if you are aware about it, or even you can use your chat box so that I can get some idea about it. So far nobody has raised the hand. So I assume that we all are eagerly waiting for this session. Am I right? It has to be a participative session. So just a minute. Let me check with the attendance. I think you guys are marking your attendance, right? Through chat box. Okay, so let us start with this session. Here is an outline, brief enough. So the topic which is being assigned to me by the Dr. Archana Madi ma'am is formulation of hypothesis. So gradually we will be going through the meaning and basic concept of hypothesis, then the characteristics of hypothesis, then the next part that comes to hypothesis testing. So it includes some details about the hypothesis, such as the types of hypothesis, then the related concepts like level of significance, decision rule, type 1 error, type 2 errors, then two tail and one tail test, and then the procedure for hypothesis testing. So students, before we move ahead, let me give you some brief that you must have came across in your earlier sessions in your PhD coursework. First thing that we need to sure that we have to clearly define our title. your title has to be clear enough that it is highlighting what exactly you are aiming at. Then the title should be used to map your objectives, and they are 100% correlated with one another. There has to have the relation between the title and objectives. Clear? So now when you will be completing your PhD courseworks, the experts might be giving you n number of ideas that the title should be brief enough, short enough. Then some of the experts they may highlight that it should include the scope in title itself. So many things are there, right? But my intention is to give you the practical orientation that you will go through. Yes, is my screen visible? I think it's clear and visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
sir, it's visible.
Thank you so much. Right? So before you finalize your title, please make sure that you have given a thought to your title number of times. Is it the study that you really want to pursue over a period of next 3 to 5 years? Right? It should not be too broader and it should not be too narrow. Because once we frame our title, objectives, and hypothesis, so once you complete your RRC, everything gets freezed. Means you cannot easily change your title, not even the objectives and not even the hypothesis. So give it a clear thought, search about it, discuss about it, and then finalize your title. Then once the title is finalized, then we have to design our study framework. The first step, it includes finalizing or fixing your objectives. Then yesterday when I was just having a normal chat with ma'am, so she told me that you may have some questions like how many objectives, how many hypotheses, and so on. So the number doesn't matters, right? Objective means whatever we have mentioned in our title. Say for example, I'll just give you very brief example. Say my friend studied the study of consumer behavior while shopping at shopping mall. Okay, now think about this title. Study of consumer behavior while shopping at shopping mall. That's it, right? So when we are understanding the consumer behavior, right, what all the things we need to consider. So the characteristics or the factors which are influencing consumer behavior must needs to be studied, isn't it? So that will be the broader scope of my objectives. My objectives should be enough in numbers, in statements, that they will help me to accomplish the study of all the influencers towards consumer behavior. Am I clear? Then, when I'm talking about shopping malls, okay, so they are not the common retail stores, right? So they have some specific characteristics. So my objective should include the basic features of shopping mall, right? So to understand the basic concept of shopping mall, right, their functioning and how it influences the consumer behavior, right? Because when means if we are going to a market, right, just observe the behavior of your kids, right? Those who are married, or if there are kids in your house, right, you just observe their behavior. When you say I'm going to buy some grocery in the retail store, there is no excitement at all. But when you say that I'm going to shopping mall, DMart, Big Bazaar, there is some sort of excitement, right? Isn't it the consumer behavior? Of course, it is, right? So this is how the number of objectives will get fixed. It may be four, it may be five, it may be six. But too many objectives, the number goes beyond six. I think there might be some sort of repetition in your study, right? And at last, if you have more than six objectives, then please try to collate them, try to merge them, so that you reach to a finite number of 4 to 6 objectives, nothing less, nothing more. Is it clear? Now, as our title to the objectives, the next job is to mapping the objectives with the hypothesis. So everything that we are going to discuss about the hypothesis is coming on our way in couple of minutes, right? But the way the title is mapped with objectives, we have to map all the objectives to our hypothesis. Not all, but the objectives which we need to justify, for which we need to give some evidence, right? Whatever I have claimed or whatever I am studying is factful, reliable, and faithful. So I need to give the evidence of it, and that will be the part of my hypothesis. Okay? So I think we are good to start. So the first thing that comes to our way is hypothesis. What is hypothesis? So basically, if you think about hypothesis as a statement, it will be extremely helpful and useful and simple. Okay, just think in a way that hypothesis is a very simple statement, right? And the way it has been emphasized in the research, it seems to be the principal instrument for your research. So what it is? It is a statement, it is an assumption, or it is a supposition that researcher wants to approve or disapprove. So if you have a thought process in your mind that hypothesis, that is something we must need to justify, we must need to approve, no, it's not like that. Even if you fail to justify your hypothesis, it is okay, because it merely means that what you assume is wrong. That's it, nothing else. Is it clear? So this is how we have to think about the statement, that is hypothesis. So next, it is a proposition or a set of proposition set forth as an explanation for the occurrence of some specified group of phenomena. Okay, so when we propose something, just think about the consumer behavior. Is the consumer behavior a function of one particular phenomena? No. The consumer behavior is a function of n number of parameters, n number of factors. For example, the knowledge of the consumer, then the experience of the consumer, education of the consumer, then gender, the demographic factors, then income of the consumer, then necessities of the consumer, then the purchasing power of a consumer. So there are so many things that we propose that these all things will have the impact on consumer behavior. Am I clear? So that sort of a statement which we are going to test will be a statement of hypothesis for my research, right? Then the statement must have the predictive ability and capable of being objectively tested. Why objectively and why not subjectively? Because whenever we are giving evidences for testing of hypothesis, we must need to be concrete. If this happens, then something will happen. That is not the hypothesis. That is not the research. So we should have the concrete evidence of the justification given for testing of hypothesis. And the statement should be clear enough that the statement itself can be tested objectively. Am I clear? So this is what we mean by the simple statement of hypothesis. Then here I have given you some examples of hypothesis. So just have a look at the statements and then we will discuss. Okay. So one by one, you just go through these statements and then I will explain you what exactly it means. students who prepares well, these are the random statements, okay? These are not copy and pasted from any book. Random statement, and the intention is very much clear that you will understand. Student who prepares well performs well in exam. Student who receives guidance will show better progress in result. Then company A is performing well compared to company B. Okay, so my humble request to all the participants, please be attentive, because when I was in your stage, I had faced n number of challenges with these details. And then today, whatever I am keeping you, this is the bunch of Kothari, CR Kothari, and the CFA content that I had learned couple of years back. Okay, which is very much practical and easy to understand, in depth, but quite easy compared to all other resources that we use as a PhD student. So look at these statements. Student who prepares well performs well in exam. So what we can infer from this statement? So preparation is something that influences students' performance in the exam. Am I right? Okay. So there is one variable, or there might be multiple variable highlighting the preparation. Preparation, it includes like availability of books, then the other resources, stationery, etc. Okay. When it comes to performance, so we may link this to grade, right? So you may have come across dependent variables and independent variables. Am I right? Have you heard these terms? Dependent variables and independent variables. Please raise a hand if you have heard these terms before. Dependent variable and independent variable. Okay. If you have not heard these terms, then raise your hand. अब थोड़ा सा उल्टा सवाल कर रहा हूं. अगर आपने ये पहले नहीं सुना है तो प्लीज अपना हैंड रेज कीजिए जो स्क्रीन पे है. स्क्रीन में रेज हैंड का ऑप्शन है, सो प्लीज क्लिक ऑन इट और यू कैन यूज योर चैट बॉक्स. यस और नो? नो रिस्पॉन्स. Yes, I had heard. Yeah. Now there are responses. Please be attentive and I'm sure that you will really enjoy this learning. Yeah. So there are 3 responses so far out of 66. They you have heard about the dependent and independent variables. So here the performance in exam, that is grade, depends upon these preparation or preparatory elements like books, stationery, and other resources. On the same line, in this statement, students who receives guidance will show better progress. So here, guidance may have the multi-dimensional approach, and the students' progress now may also be multi-dimensional. So here we talked about grade, progress in result. So the progress might be n number of ways. Then the third statement, company A is performing well compared to company B. So here we have made a very clear statement that company A is performing well compared to company B. So what type of statements these are that we will study, we will come across in couple of minutes. So before that, what we have to understand from this, that hypothesis is an predictive statement and which is capable of being objectively tested. Am I clear? So here, if we are considering the preparedness, these are the factors influencing students' preparation. When it comes to outcome, the outcome is very easy. We will just look at the grades, percentage scored by the student, and if there is an improvement, certainly we will conclude that the preparationary factors have affected positively, negatively, the performance of the students in terms of grades. Now, the students who receives the guidance will show better progress in result. Same way, I have just replaced the preparation with the guidance, mentoring, right? And the progress in result. Now the result might be of anything. It may be employability, it may be some progress in a specific subject, or it may be overall grade of a student. In the third statement, company A is performing well compared to company B, right? So here what I will do, I will evaluate, say, the financial statements, P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow for the company A and company B, and then I will conclude that whether the company A is performing well or not. Right? So in all the three statements, you can see these statements are predictive in nature. Right? It is not something which is concrete.
Hmm.
This is just a prediction. And that's why I told you initially
ठीक है.
that even if you fail to justify the hypothesis, there is no issue at all. Right? So predictive statements that we understood, objectively tested. So there is no if, no but. We have to give a clear, certain justification for each hypothesis, which is analyzed, which is evaluated on the basis of some facts and figures. That is what we call as objectively tested. A statement which we can test. Thus, the hypothesis states what we are looking for and proposition that can be tested for its validity. So, validity is extremely important. Clear? So far, so good. I hope you all are getting what I'm explaining. Now, next it comes to characteristics of hypothesis. So, just like the title, each hypothesis, this predictive statement which we have framed, must be clear and precise. Clear? So the hypothesis is an underlying assumption for your study. For example, when it came to my research study was role of venture capital firms. Role of venture capital firms in development of entrepreneurship. Okay. Role of venture capital firms in development of entrepreneurship and MSMEs in the state of Maharashtra. Now, one of my hypotheses was there is correlation between credit funding, credit funding and entrepreneurial activity. This was one of the hypotheses. So there is correlation between credit funding and entrepreneurial activities. Okay. So the purpose of this hypothesis was to highlight that credit funding is one of the constraint for entrepreneurial activity across the nation. Clear? So is it the clear statement? Is it precise without any too many articles, too many words, right? Too many compositions? It's very much clear and precise. Then it should state the relationship between the variables. So this is something that we have to go back. Look at this hypothesis once again. So here, these preparatory factors are nothing but the variables, and the grade in the exam is the another variable. So grade depends upon these factors, right? Now it is your job to find out which one is the independent variable and which one is the dependent variable. What depends upon what, right? Then the mentoring guidance activity results in good progress of the students, right? So when it comes to guidance or mentoring, it influences or it promotes the progress. Am I clear? So again, on the similar lines, you can think about what depends upon what factors. Here, company A is performing well compared to company B. So what I need to do is I need to evaluate the variables, right? Say that may be extracted from P&L, balance sheet, and cash flows to justify that the performance of A is better than performance of B. So these all will be my study variables, the data which I am extracting, and I'm comparing that of A with B. Those all will be the variables, right? So in all these three statements, if you think carefully, that each statement is giving us the relationship between two or more variables. Clear? So this is what we have to think about, what we have to understand from this relationship between variables. Now, it should have the limited scope and specific. The hypothesis must have the limited scope and it has to be very specific. So when I was talking about this hypothesis, correlation between credit funding and the entrepreneurial activity. So what I did, right? I collected the data from the secondary sources like credit guarantee scheme, right? I evaluated the funding given by all the agencies under the credit guarantee scheme and the number of entrepreneurial ventures benefited, right? Number of entrepreneurs who availed that facility under the credit guarantee scheme, right? The simple correlation between these two numbers help me to justify that yes, there is a need of credit funding to promote the entrepreneurial activity,
बर
because number of business tycoons, they say in their speeches,
नाहीये.
right, that you don't need funds to start a business, right? But when it comes on the ground, up to certain extent, we need the funds, right? And when I was interacting with the entrepreneurs, almost 500 entrepreneurs I interacted face to face during the 5 years of my research tenure, right? And hundreds of venture capital firms, right? Guys, this was a face to face meeting, and that's why I was extremely sure about my research. What exactly I did, right? It was 100% concrete, it was 100% sure because of my confidence, and that confidence came through the interaction with the entrepreneurs, right? So then I understood that why the entrepreneurial activity fails at a certain stage. They fail because of funding. And what exactly the VC does? So VC invests the capital at early stage. So he is an investor first. Just a minute. Sorry. So what the VC does, he acts as an investor. He acts as an investor. Then is it the only role of VC? So I'm just giving you an example. Okay? No. So besides this, investor also helps the budding entrepreneurs as a partner. Okay, so he helps them to run the business, right? And the third thing what he does is he is acting as a mentor to the entrepreneur, because most of the entrepreneurs they are expert in product designing, they're expert in manufacturing, but they are not expert in managing the business. So this is how the role of VC, venture capital firms or venture capitalist in entrepreneurship, has helped me to decode all these things. But the each hypothesis was specific and limited in scope. Then the hypothesis The next statement it comes to our way is consistent with most
Oh,
known facts. What it means? It means that
huh.
you are talking about something
Oh,
which is
let's
commonly
say
known
services
to
across
everybody.
Minnesota.
Is it clear? You are not talking which is completely out of the box, right? Then this will not be a research, it will be an invention. You
Let's say
are
services
completely
across
introducing
Minnesota.
something which is unknown to the world, right? We are doing research, right? What we are doing?
Awesome.
We are doing research. This might you have come across in the very first session to your coursework. Research, right? So it has to be
Why ever
consistent
positive
with the
psychologically?
facts which are common, which are known and specific. Then we should be able to test the hypothesis in reasonable time. Guys, we cannot do a census study, right? If the general, say, common man or the general population is my respondent, so do you think that I can undertake the census study? Means I can take in account the response of each and every citizen of the nation? This is impossible for one particular researcher, right? So we should be able to test the hypothesis within the reasonable time. Then hypothesis must explain facts that gave rise to need for explanation, right? So look at this hypothesis and think about this. Do you think that this statement demands some clarification? The way I say that there is a correlation between credit funding and entrepreneurial activity, suddenly you may have a question in your mind: how and why this is so, right? This is the beauty of hypothesis. It explains the fact that gives rise to the need for explanation. If we have a silent statement, right? I scored 100% marks in so and so subject, then I will not ask any question to you because it is clearly mentioned and straightforward, right? But when it comes to the need for an explanation, we say, yes, this is an hypothesis. Okay, next. Now, I think we are done with the hypothesis statement and its framing. If you have any questions, one or two you can ask related to framing of hypothesis. Or else, if you can keep it on hold, we will have the Q&A at the end of the session. Is it fine? But
Yes,
it is
sir.
better.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so
Oh,
much. Okay, so then once the statement of hypothesis is done, what next that comes to our way is hypothesis testing. Now let us understand what is hypothesis testing. So hypothesis testing is a branch of statistics which is known as statistical inference, right? Means interpreting some statistical information to justify our hypothesis. Am I clear? So now when it comes to hypothesis testing, this is not something which we can just orally justify. We can just justify with a paragraph. It's not like that. We have to give the analysis of some numbers, some statistical data, right? And next to that, there are certain tests, statistical tests, which we have to use to show that whatever interpretation we have inferred from the data is statistically significant. Please listen my words carefully. Whatever analysis we have made, we have to analyze the data, right? And we have to prove that the analysis therein, which is coming after the statistical analysis of the data, is statistically valid and statistically significant. So then we will also be discussing the term level of significance, right? And this statistical inference is divided into two subdivisions, right? So one is the estimation and another one is hypothesis testing. So what do we mean by estimation? What is this parameters value? Just a simple question. Say if I am saying the mean of a certain population. Okay, I think you belong to commerce background, so you might be aware about the stock market. So mean returns of Nifty 50, right? So when we have this type of a question in a mind, so we can say approximately 20% CAGR, cumulative average growth rate, right? So what will be the mean return that we can expect from Nifty 50 over the period of 10 years? Guys, the answer is approximately 20% CAGR. So that is cumulative average growth rate. Okay. So now what is this parameters value? 20. This is called as estimation, right? Now, when I talk about hypothesis testing, is this the parameters value? Is it? So this question we are going to answer with the help of hypothesis testing. Okay. So if I am going to write, if I write here in a statistical manner, say mu is the mean of the population, and we say that the average return by Nifty 50 over a period of 10 years will be equal to 20%. Then the question arises, is this the parameter value? Is it true? That we have to justify with the help of hypothesis testing, a branch of statistical inference, a division of statistical inference, right? So sometimes we might be estimating the values, and sometimes we might be getting into hypothesis testings, right? So if we think about the scientific experiments, they have the estimations, but in social science we have hypothesis testing, because in social science we are dealing with human behavior, right? Social factors, economical factors, right? Which are by default complex in nature and cannot be certain enough, right? So this is how we have to understand the meaning of hypothesis testing, right? Next. Now it comes to extremely important part as far as the research is concerned, and that is null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Okay, so please be alert and listen me carefully. Now for these four slides, when I will be explaining you null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis, I allow you to please ask the question by unmuting yourself, because I am not on the control panel now, because I am in front of my presentation screen, right? So control panel is in some other slide, right? Google control panel is not in front of me now. I'm just able to access my presentation. That's it. So if you have anything to ask, don't put it in chat box. Don't raise your hand. Directly unmute and please ask your questions straight away. Now, what is null hypothesis? So basically, null hypothesis is the statement that assumes no relation between variables. Am I clear? If not, then please mug up this sentence. Null hypothesis assumes no relation between variables. So the hypothesis which I have quoted here, that there is a correlation between credit funding and entrepreneurial activity, this is an alternative hypothesis. So what will be the null hypothesis? The null hypothesis will be there is no correlation between credit funding and entrepreneurial activity. If it comes to this, students who prepares well performs well in the exam. So the null hypothesis will be students preparation and his or her performance in exam are not related, right? The guidance has no influence on progress of a student. We cannot compare the performance of company A with company B. These types of statements we can say are the null hypothesis. Okay, the guys, please make it very clear that the interpretation of the experts may be different from what exactly I am giving you, because this has a very much practical approach that I have learned from the chartered financial analyst curriculum. Okay, so please believe me, this is the ultimately what exactly we are going to do. Okay, so null hypothesis assumes no relation between variables, and the extremely important thing that it is denoted as H nod, right? H nod, this is the symbol for null hypothesis. More or less, you might be aware of it or not, but when it comes to testing of hypothesis, it is the null hypothesis that we actually test, right? So you will get the clarity of this on the next slide. So hypothesis to be tested is the null hypothesis. Considered true means whatever we have assumed is a fact, unless hypothesis test gives convincing evidence that null hypothesis is false. Am I clear, guys? So what we have assumed, there is a correlation between credit funding and entrepreneurial activity. There is an influence of shopping mall ambience on consumer behavior. These statements are the alternate hypothesis, which are my assumptions, right? So what I have to do, I have to consider the null hypothesis as a true until and unless I give a concrete evidence, convincing evidence that what I have assumed is correct. So what we have assumed is correct, then ultimately the null hypothesis is false. Am I clear? This is what we are going to do for next 3 years, and this is for what we are struggling for next 3 years, guys. Please mark my words, right? So if you have got this clarity, then certainly your life will be too easy. Couple of years back, I was attending the final viva of a particular student, and my dear friend, that in final viva, the candidate mentioned alternate as null and null as alternate, right? So don't you think that this is too basic that a researcher must have to understand, isn't it? What do you think about this, right? Even though you might be struggling, it's a theoretical interpretation, right? So you don't need to worry about it, right? But there are certain ways through which you can learn this, we can understand this, right? So alternative hypothesis. Now, before I move ahead, please let me make one statement very much clear. Everything else apart from null hypothesis is an alternative hypothesis. Am I clear? And that is what I have written here. Now, will it be the only statement? Answer is no. Will there be a possibility of number of statements? Answer is yes. So when we are framing the hypothesis, and once we fixed the null hypothesis, everything else, including your hypothesis, will be an alternate to the null hypothesis. Am I clear? So now, for example, if we assume mean returns is equal to or less than 0, let me write it on screen. Mean return is equal to or less than 0. Now, guys, think about this statement. either it is equal to 0 or anything that is less than 0. Means now if I draw 0 like this, 0, then this side 1, 2, 3, 4, this side minus 1, minus 2. Okay. So when I am framing this statement, mean returns is equal to or less than 0. Please let me clear that this is correct. We don't need R here. So equal to or less than 0 means I am completely specifying this side. Okay. So now the alternate is mean return is greater than 0. Right. So what is an alternative to this? It is only this portion. Am I clear? However, if I say that mean is, just a minute, mean is 20%, then the alternate can be anything which is less than 20% and anything which is greater than 20%. Am I clear? So it may be less than 20 or it may be greater than 20. And here is your mean value. So this or this, both the things are possible that we are going to discuss when we will be discussing one tail and two tail test. Okay. So I hope you have got the clarity between what is null and what is alternate. Now here you will understand it with more sense. So understanding alternatives to null hypothesis. What we mean by alternatives? So let us assume that mean return, that is null hypothesis, is equal to 100. Right? So what can be an alternative? Alternative simply can be not equal to null. Right? So what we can say? We can just say that mean return is not equal to 100. It may be more than 100 or it may be less than 100, that you can see in the further statements. Right? Mean return is less than 100. Mean return is greater than 100. Right? This is how we have to understand. So how to read this? The alternative hypothesis is that the population mean is not equal to 100. This is one alternative. It may be more or it may be less than 100. In this statement, what we have mentioned that mean return is more than 100. So the alternative hypothesis is that population mean is greater than 100. This can be the one side of the coin, and this can be your one hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis in this case is population mean is less than 100. Another side, right? When you are thinking about this, you are talking about both the sides, and here specifically less than or greater than. I hope now you have got the clarity of alternatives. Okay. Now, when it comes to null hypothesis, this is something that we should think about from the perspective of a research scholar. So, a null hypothesis represents the hypothesis we are trying to reject. As I already mentioned, that the alternative hypothesis is what we assume. Okay. So, if we have to justify that what we have assumed is correct, then what is opposite to our assumption, that is null hypothesis, we have to reject. Am I clear? So if we reject this, then by default what we assume is correct. So you may have understood this. If I have to make this line small without touching this line again, so what I can do, I just can draw the another line, right, bigger than the earlier one. That's it. The same thing we are doing here, right? Without altering our assumption, we are trying to reject what is opposite or what is not matching to our assumption. So a null hypothesis represents the hypothesis we are trying to reject, and alternative hypothesis represents all other possibilities, guys. So null hypothesis is the hypothesis that we are going to reject, and except the null, whatever all possibilities are there, all are your alternatives. Now, if the rejection of a certain hypothesis, when it is actually true, involves greater risk. I think I missed a comma here. So, if the rejection of a certain hypothesis, when it is actually true, involves greater risk, means what it means? If a null hypothesis is true, what we have assumed is wrong, but now I don't need to say this. If the null hypothesis is correct, by default it means we are wrong. What we have assumed is wrong, right? So that is what I am talking about. It is taken as a null hypothesis because then the probability of rejecting it when it is true is an alpha. This is also we are going to study after a couple of slides. So null hypothesis should always be specific hypothesis. That is, it should not state about or approximately a certain value, right? It has to be a general statement. Am I clear? Alternate hypothesis, it has to be specific. Clear? Now, the last slide, most probably. Generally, means about the null hypothesis. Okay. Generally, in hypothesis testing, we proceed on the basis of null hypothesis, keeping the alternative hypothesis in the view. What I said is we have to reject the null to prove that alternate is correct. So without considering alternative, I will be rejecting the null, right? Keeping view with the alternate. So why this is so? The answer is that the assumption that null hypothesis is true. This is universal truth in the research. So the null hypothesis is true that we have to assume. One can assign the probabilities to different possible sample results, right? Now, if we assume this is true or this is fact, then only we can think about the alternatives, right? But this cannot be done if we proceed with alternative hypothesis. So instead of considering the null hypothesis, if I say there is a correlation, right? Now there is a correlation means there will be a positive correlation, there may be negative correlation, there may be low magnitude of correlation, there may be high magnitude of correlation. So these all things will come under one umbrella when I am considering my research without null hypothesis. But if I say that there is no correlation between credit funding and entrepreneurial activity, then only it gives me a scope to think about if there is no correlation, then I will start digging deep, right? And at last I will find yes, there is a positive correlation with a very high magnitude. So what it means? What we have mentioned in the null hypothesis is wrong. So we reject the null and we accept the alternate hypothesis. Okay. Now next part that comes to our way is the level of significance. Okay. So just go through the slide first, then you will get the 90% of the idea about this. So let me go take you back to the one simple word. Think about this probabilities. Okay. So when we are testing something, if we are 100% sure, guys, there is no need of testing. If we are 100% sure, then why we need a test, right? So as we are making a statement of assumption, and on the basis of that assumption, we are framing a null hypothesis, right? Now we have to do each and everything that will help us to justify that the null is true. Am I clear? Now Why true, guys? Because look at this sentence. We are, no, not this one, this one, right? Null is the hypothesis that we are going to test, and we are assuming that null hypothesis is true. Am I clear? And this is how we will be moving forward. Now, when we are justifying that null hypothesis is true, do you think that there will be a minute probability that we may be wrong? Yes, of course. And that probability of being wrong is nothing but the level of significance, right? So when we guess something, say whether it will rain today or not, right? If I ask you out of 68, you can see that throughout the day it was clear environment today. So we will just guess that no, it's not going to rain today. But do you think that this will be the 100% assurance? Answer is no. Still, there will be a 5% chance that you may be wrong. And that 5% chance or a chance of being wrong is nothing but the level of significance. So it is always some percentage, generally 5%, which should be chosen with great care, thought, and reason. Am I clear? So you might have heard something like 95% confidence interval, right? So have you ever thought about what is left with that 5%? So guys, that 5% is this level of significance, LOS. Am I clear? So if you are 95% confident, it means there is a 5% probability that we may commit some mistakes, which is acceptable. Am I clear? So in case we take the significance level at 5%, then this implies that alternate hypothesis will be rejected even if it has 5% probability of being true. Am I clear? What it means, at 5% level of significance, we are taking a chance that we may be wrong and the null hypothesis may be correct. But though it is correct, we are 95% confident that it is wrong. Am I clear? So if we are 95% confident that the null hypothesis is wrong or false, we are making an other statement that we are 5% sure, or we have 5% probability that it may be true. Am I clear? So the opposite is confidence interval. Now, if type 1 error is fixed at 5%, what is type 1, type 2? We will discuss it in a couple of minutes. It means that there are 5 chances in 100 trials that we will reject the null hypothesis when the null hypothesis is true. Am I clear, guys? I hope it is making sense to each one of you. Because if you understood this, then I am 100% sure your struggle in research methodology will come to an end. Clear? Next. Decision rule or test of hypothesis. Now it is just merely comes to an acceptance or rejection. Am I clear? So we will be discussing a test statistics after a couple of slides. So here, say level of significance 0.05 or 5%, right? So if we are understanding the correlation, say Pearson's correlation, and the value is 0.9 plus positive correlation with high magnitude of 0.9. Bing is the highest, it means direct correlation between the variables, one Bing. So I am considering 0.9 correlation with positive magnitude or positive direction. So if this comes true and when the level of significance is 0.05 or less, we will say that the correlation between the variables is statistically significant. What went wrong in this? Right? And if this comes to your research, you are good to go ahead to reject the null and accept your assumption that is the alternate hypothesis. This is the only decision making rule or the test of hypothesis, nothing else. Clear? Now, if we say you are 100%, you most of the times we come across a statement that is very hard to reject, right? And if this is the case with your null hypothesis, it the statement itself seems to be correct, then what we can do, we can decrease our level of significance. Means instead of 5%, we can take it to 1%. In that 1%, we can take a chance to say no to true null hypothesis. Am I clear? So this is a very rare chance that we will be rejecting the true null hypothesis. Am I clear? Because the researcher is being taught in the coursework that you have to reject the null. So throughout his journey, while he pursues the research, he keeps in mind that I have to reject the null hypothesis. But when he talks to himself, यार ये तो सही स्टेटमेंट लग रहा है मुझे. So if you have this type of feeling, then please decrease your level of significance to 1%, which will take your confidence level to 99%. Am I clear? So 1% chance banta hai. There is no harm at all. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. That is type 1 error and type 2 errors. Now, what do you mean by errors? So as we discussed that whenever it comes to research, we have to reject the null hypothesis. Okay. So let us understand the acceptance first. So if we look at the acceptance of null hypothesis, then you can see that if the null hypothesis is true and you are accepting the null hypothesis, it is a correct decision. But if you are rejecting the null hypothesis, when the null hypothesis is true, we are committing type 1 error. And this alpha is nothing but LOS, level of significance. Am I clear? So if we are rejecting true null, मीन्स जो आपके अपोजिशन में था वो सही था लेकिन फिर भी आप टेस्ट जीत गए. So this is called as type 1 error, right? Rejecting a true null. You can write it down somewhere. Rejecting true null. Okay. Now, the null hypothesis itself is false. And if you reject the false null hypothesis, you have taken a correct decision. But now, because of lack of your knowledge, data, or analysis, if you failed to reject false null, this is type 2 error, right? And this error occurs because of your lack of confidence. So beta is the confidence interval. Am I clear? So type, oh my god, guys, this we need to correct. Okay, here you can see this is 1, actually this is type 2. Okay, so I might have copy and paste it. So this is type 2 error, which is because of confidence interval. error in your confidence, right? So in this case, your confidence interval might be 90%, and you have given the 10% scope for null hypothesis, right? So there are n number of things that can be discussed here. So when I was pursuing my CFA, Donald Trump, I don't need to take names, but still it is okay, and Raghuram Rajan. Do you know these two names? So, President of this,
Yes, sir.
yes, and
Yes, sir.
Rajan is the Honorable RBI Governor, right? So, this happened at the same time. Means we rejected the Raghuram Rajan from continuing his second term, and the USA allowed the person to take a charge as a president. This is not this is not my thought. This is the story one of my classmates during the CFA classes has developed. Okay, whether they are right, whether they are wrong, I don't know, but you can keep it in mind. So my teacher used to give me the uh, example of good girlfriend and bad girlfriend, right? So you are rejecting the good girlfriend and accepting the bad girlfriend. These are the errors, right? Rejecting the good girlfriend, this is type 1 error, and accepting the bad girlfriend, this is type 2 error. Am I clear? Similarly, when the Trump became the president,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
sorry, please come again. I just missed what you were saying. Okay, I'll continue. So Donald Trump became the president. So we have accepted the error type 1, and we have rejected the truth type 2. Okay. So this is about the type 1 and type 2 errors. Now I think this might be the conclusionary. Yeah, we are coming to the end in 2 3 slides. Two tail test and one tail test. Okay, so this is something you might have came across, right? Test statistics. Okay, so when we talk about two tail test, say 0, and there is a scope on negative side as well as positive side, this is called as two test test, two tail test. Okay, so this is the rejection area for null hypothesis. This is the rejection area for null hypothesis. Okay, so right skew and left skew, these are the two possibilities. Okay, now if we get into these details, it will be too much of statistics, right? So if we get some time, or if you have any issues with this, you can come back to me. I will be available all the times. Okay, this is not just for this session. You can communicate to me through Dr. Archana Mari ma'am, right? She's means we are in contact, so you can get back to me. So when we talk about only one side of a tail, right? This is called as a tail. That's why we call it two-tailed or one-tailed. So the way we have mentioned this tail here, there can be the other tail as well. So either right tail or left tail. So but if the conclusion is limited to one tail, we will call it as a one tail test. But if the conclusion is related with both the tails, right, we will call it as a two tail test. For now, I think this much is sufficient. Okay. So if your sample data falls in this region, right, this is your confidence interval. So accept the, sorry, reject the null. If it is beyond, then reject or accept the null hypothesis. Same is the case with this as well. This is rejection reason. So I think we are good to move ahead. Now procedure for hypothesis testing. So making formal statement. So this is about null and alternate hypothesis. So first you have to frame the hypothesis. We have to select the significance level 5% or 1% or even it can be 10%. Then deciding the distribution to use one-tailed or two-tailed, selecting a random sample and computing an appropriate value. So collection of data and analysis of data with the help of test statistics, right? Then calculation of probability. So you can see here the probability region for rejection, right? So here I have mentioned only one part because it is one tail test. Then comparing the probability and concluding the result in terms of acceptance or rejection. So you can understand this with this in a better way. So state your null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. Then specify your alpha, that is level of significance, 5%, 1%, 10%. Then sample distribution. Okay, means this part is related with data collection. Calculate probability that sample may diverge from the expectation. So again, we are coming back to the level of significance, right? So when I am conducting a survey, there is always a probability that people may give wrong answers. And how much that probability? So is the probability equal or small? Okay, now you have assumed this 5% level of significance. Okay, what we will do, we will now calculate this test statistics. So is the probability of your test statistics equal or smaller than level of significance for one-tailed or two-tailed test? If the answer is yes, means your results are valid when the level of significance is less equal to 0.05 or less, then you say yes, reject the null hypothesis. But if the probability, this one 5%, the probability is greater than 0.05, then you say no and accept the null hypothesis. Am I clear? This is called as hypothesis testing. I think with this I come to an end of this session. Okay, so now I am open for Q&A. I'll keep my presentation on so that if you ask me to go any one of the slide, I can go, right? Okay. Question and answers. And I request you, even if you find that whatever I have quoted is wrong, is misleading, is incorrect, I
हां,
am ready
कन्क्लूड
to
करते ना
correct
थोड्या
myself.
वेळाने
I am
क्वेश्चन आन्सर
ready
झाले की.
to correct whatever mistakes I have made. But
हां, हां, चालेल.
truly, I request you to have some dialogue.
Hello, Prashant sir.
Yes, please.
This is Nimbulkar here, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It's a really wonderful sessions, no doubt.
Thank you so much.
And your example is very good. Good girlfriend and bad girlfriend. So I
Yes,
really
yes.
understand all those concepts, sir. Can you share your number, sir, in chat box?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
No, I'm writing it on screen. I'm writing it on screen. Everybody, double
Okay.
nine
Okay.
700.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Most welcome, sir.
Hello, any more questions, please?
Sir, but I just I request the audience to please ask the questions.
Ask the question
Sir,
if
I
you
have
have
a
doubts.
question.
Yes, sir. Someone is asking.
In your previous slide, you had given three examples. For the third example,
Compare
where
company A with B.
two companies have been compared. So in that example, what will be the dependent and what will be the independent variable?
No, here the variables are your numbers, financial statements. We will be extracting ratios, right? On the
Okay.
basis of ratios and cash flow statements, we will be evaluating the performance of company A and performance of company B independently. So here we have two independent variables. Now the variables
Okay.
might be n number of variables like net profit margin, gross profit margin, operating cash flow, investing cash flow, financing cash flow, right? These all are my variables, and I'm comparing these variables with the other variables, but both are independent in nature.
Okay. So can
Am
we
I
say
clear?
there is no dependent variable here?
Yes, of
Only
course.
two independent.
Yes. Now let me ask you a very simple question. Do you think that the company A's performance depends upon company B's performance?
No.
No. Company B's performance depends upon company A's performance?
No.
No. The performance of both the companies depends upon their product portfolio and their market,
Yes, sir.
right? So these two things are completely independent. But if we have to compare them, we can compare the same numbers, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
That's it. So the
Yes.
intention behind giving you these three example was this one, and you have asked a very right question. Yes. Anything else?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, yes, sir. This is Anita Sule. Sir,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
wanted to ask the question like that. If there is a comparison between one or more variables, then what type of test is useful? Suppose I
Okay.
am comparing 10 small finance banks, then which will be the useful test for them?
Let me. I'll give you the 100% concrete solution for this. Okay. Just give me a second's time. Everybody, please be alert. This is how the discussion helps us. Okay. Let me take you to the online. Just a minute. Huh? So just a minute, guys. Huh? Okay. Now is my screen visible? Others, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. You
Yes,
please
sir.
note it down. I'll show you what exactly it is. Look at this. The first website, Lord Statistics. Everybody, please note it down. This will solve your problem related to statistical analysis. You don't need to take help from others. You just need to take the guidance from your guide, and you need to make sure that whatever you are doing is correct. Means your alternate is correct, your null is correct, right? The variables are correct. Then you don't need to go anywhere else. Just go to this statistical learn. Okay. Here, go to the the tour. Okay. So here, do you see selecting test? Just click on it. Okay, and your next journey will get started. So I think it may need a subscription, and the subscription cost is just around 500 or 1000 rupees, not more than that. So how it helps, guys? First of all, it will ask you what type of variables you have, right? Is my presentation screen visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes or yeah?
Yes, sir.
You can see thank you. Are you able to see thank you on my
No, sir.
screen?
It's not moving.
Okay,
It's
okay.
not going forward.
I need. Have you noted down this, or else I'll finish this part first.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So when we click on selecting test now, the first question it will ask you what type of variables you have. Do you know the four types of variables? Continuous variable, Do you know the 4 types of variables? You please note it down. There are 4 types of variables. Okay. Then once you fix it, it will ask you the another question. What is the relationship between your variables? So the way ma'am has asked, what is the relationship? So she wants to compare, right? So she will say the comparison between the two variables, right? Or we can say both are independent variables, or we can say A is dependent variable and B is independent variable. So once we do this, right? Once we do this, it will give us the test readily available, which we have to use for hypothesis testing. Am I clear? And at what cost? At a cost of rupees 1000 or less than that. I will show you the pricing as well. Okay. So then it comes to statistical test. So just have a look at this. When we are giving differences between groups, now I will give you the simple example. Look at this first, independent sample t-test. Okay. Now, when I say that the shopping behavior of
The
मेल
screen
एंड
नहीं चल रहा है, मतलब आपने जो
Slides are not open, sir.
नहीं नहीं ओके 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 जस्ट मिनट जस्ट सॉरी हाँ वो मैंने क्लिक करके नया स्क्रीन नया वेब पेज खुला ना तो वो वहाँ चला गया लेट मी शेयर एंटायर स्क्रीन सो नाउ देयर वोंट बी एनी इशू जा भाई sorry guys now I think it's visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me take you back again. So once I click on that link, I came to this page. So then I clicked on take a tour. Then here you can see the second option, selecting test. So this will guide you to select the appropriate test for your research. Okay, so I think now this is the paid tool, step-by-step instructions, group 1. So how does it works? It asks you what type of variables you have. Once you select the variables, it will ask you what type of relation you are trying to study between the variables. Okay. So once it is done, it will give you the list of tests which can help you to justify your hypothesis. And then once the test names are displayed, we will come to this last tab, statistical tests. Okay. So if the solution has given that we need to have independent sample t-test. So what it means, I was giving you the example. So if I am going to study the buying behavior of male and female genders in the shopping mall, buying behavior of male or female. So is it different or it's same? So for this, what I can do, I can take independent sample t-test. Means male sample is different and gender sample is different. So what this test will do, the test will compare all these things. Means the buying behavior, the responses of male respondents and responses of the female respondents. If they are different, then your test statistics will be less than 0.05 and you can conclude that the buying behavior of male or female in the shopping mall is different. Am I clear? Now, if you want to study the predictive scores, then here you can see linear regression and all these things. Okay, and I think they are not allowing us to click on this. They are saying contact us. Okay.
Sir, one more question I have.
Please.
Actually, there are so many tests, and we don't know a lot about all these tests. Like few which are very famous, like t-test, f-test, chi-square
Yes,
test.
yes.
Few we know, and we do not know in matlab much detail. We do not know about it. So, how can we perform the analysis without deep understanding of these things?
Statistics.
Or we need to study this.
Okay, ma'am. So now I think it's a paid version, but here you can see understanding SPSS statistics. So first thing what you need to do, you need to go for selecting test. Okay. So you need to enter. Do you understand variables, ma'am? What exactly we mean by variables?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So do you understand the different types of variables? Scale, ordinal,
Yes, sir.
continuous, right? So these two questions are very much basic. Now, once you enter this data, how many variables you have? One, two, or more than two. Then what is the relation? What type of variables are they? Whether they are ordinal, interval, scale, or continuous. You mention it. Then it will ask you what type of relation you are predicting between the variables. So you will say, I want to compare them independently, or I want to study the impact of remaining three on the first variable. Am I clear?
Oh,
So once
yes,
you
sir.
put this information, no,
Hmm.
this website will make your job easy, right?
Okay.
It will give you the list of the test out of these tests.
Hmm.
See, you can see here difference between group, predicting scores, graph and charts, associations like correlation we discussed, right? Then we have one sample test, survival analysis, reliability, data reduction, assumptions, moderation. So these are the only tests which we need for social science, nothing
Yeah.
else. Okay. So now your question was that there are so many tests, so which one we should use? Am I right? So this will give you the result that this test you should use. So now it will give you the some details that yes, you have to use one way ANOVA, you have to use chi-square test and so on. So this way, this website will help you to understand each and every bit of your statistical outputs. Okay. So what you need is you need one machine, and on that particular machine you will be installing SPSS free version for 1 month access. Am I clear? So I will suggest don't do it directly on your PC. If you are visiting college, if you are visiting any other institution or wherever you have an access to the another PC, not yours, you install SPSS, you run it, and you do these experiments. Clear? Now, when you will
Yes.
do this for yourself, you install it on your PC, you run these programs, and you get these outputs. Right? Now, once the output is received, the next job is presenting the data and writing a write up. So, guys, here you can see an independent sample t test was run to determine if there were differences in engagement to an advertisement between males and females. यही तो चाहिए हमें, यही लिखना है ना थीसिस में. यस और नो गाइस?
Yes, sir.
या सो यही आपको लिखना है थीसिस में. अगर आप इस तरीके से इस इंफॉर्मेशन को यहाँ देख देख के तो लिख सकते हैं ना, आर क्या आया, आर स्क्वायर क्या आया, एडजस्टेड स्क्वायर क्या आया, ड्यूरेशन वेरिएशन कितना था, सिग्निफिकेंस कितना था. सो ये सारा एज इट इज लिखना है, राइट? अब यहाँ पर इन्होंने क्या किया है, देखो, डिफरेंस इन एंगेजमेंट टू एन एडवर्टीजमेंट बिटवीन मेल एंड फीमेल. तो मैं क्या लिखूंगा, डिफरेंस इन बाइंग हैबिट्स ऑफ मेल एंड फीमेल वाइल शॉपिंग एट शॉपिंग मॉल. मुझे ये इन से निकाल के फीमेल्स तक इतना स्टेटमेंट निकालना है, और मुझे क्या लिखना है, वेयर डिफरेंसेस इन बाइंग हैबिट्स ऑफ मेल एंड फीमेल इन शॉपिंग मॉल. यस और नो?
Yes, sir.
Clear? So there were no outliers in the data as assessed by the inspection of box plot. Engagement scores.
पैसे बेचे थे
So यहाँ पर क्या होगा, शॉपिंग बिहेवियर फॉर ईच लेवल ऑफ जेंडर वेर नॉर्मली डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड. मतलब जो बिहेवियर था वो मेल का भी नॉर्मल था और फीमेल का भी नॉर्मल था. अभी नॉर्मल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन क्या होता है, अभी जो बेल्ट शेप मैंने दिखाया ना आपको, स्क्यूड टू टेल स्टैटिस्टिक्स, लेफ्ट हैंड राइट हैंड, इसको कहते हैं नॉर्मल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन. अगर वो एक साइड में स्क्यूड है तो उसके अलग अलग मतलब कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस होते हैं. सो ये आप सीआर कोठारी के बुक में पढ़ सकते हैं.
ट्रांसफर करायचे
ठीक है, चलो आगे चलते हैं. एंगेजमेंट स्कोर फॉर ये हो
ड्रेस
गया as assessed by Shapiro-Wilkes
ड्रेस
test.
घेतल्याने म्हणायचं
Homogeneity of variances was
माझ्या
violated
पोशाखाचे ड्रेस
as assessed by Leibniz test. Equality of variances. So separate variances and Wealth सेटर वेफ करेक्शन वेयर
किंवा असं कर.
यूज्ड द एडवर्टीजमेंट. सो
आताच
यहाँ पर मैं
हे
लिखूंगा द कंज्यूमर बाइंग बिहेवियर was more engaging to male
करायचं
viewers, more
पैसे ट्रान्सफर
male
करायचे.
customers
1,500 काय असतील ते
than
म्हणजे
female
तिकडे ड्रेस
customers.
होईल
That's
म्हणून
it.
मला पोशाख घ्यायचाच
This
होता.
is what I am expecting you to write in your
पैसे
thesis,
घे
right?
काहीतरी
So you
घेणार
will have the test statistics tables आपके पास होंगे, ये ग्राफ्स आपके पास होंगे.
कॉन्ट्रीब्युशन एवढं
एक्सेल में
आहे.
इससे भी अच्छे ग्राफ्स बन सकते हैं, right?
हां
So you get each and everything with this website. So क्या करना है देखो, you all are attached to one center. Not everyone needs to buy a subscription at a time.
जाऊ दे एकदाच घ्यायचे.
10 के ग्रुप बना लो, आप तो 70 हो यार. This is very much big number.
पैसे
तो
ट्रान्सफर
70 लोग एक बार एक ले लो सब्सक्रिप्शन, ठीक है. वो कॉलेज में जैसे अर्चना मैडम है उनके पास दे दो. यू ऑल गो एंड एक्सेस इट एट हर पीसी, क्योंकि वो क्या देखेंगे, अगर मल्टीपल आईपी से अगर एक्सेस हो रहा है ना, देन दे विल ब्लॉक योर आईडी. मैक्सिमम 2-3 IDs आर ओके. सो यू गो टू योर कॉलेज, यू कलेक्टिवली बाय इट 15 and let's check the pricing. It is on time period basis, monthly इतना उतना. So look at this, guys. 1 month access $6. $6 माने 8 6 are 48, 480. 3 months access $10, 800 rupees. So this will solve all your problems. So 500 you have to invest once, right? Or collectively you all invest this $20. You keep the access with your college, and you all, whenever you go, you access it. And I am 100% sure you will be doing this once or twice, not more than 10 times in a day or month. Once you do this, once you get an idea, job is done. So you don't need to approach anyone else, right? So don't worry about this. They don't have any issues in payment reversals and all, but we don't want paying any reversals. Just pay the $6 and your job is done. So what do you think now? How is it? Right from write up to conclusion, everything is taken care of with the help of this. So is it good or not?
And
That I don't know.
it is our job made easy.
Yeah. So I wish you all the best. If there is anything that I can help you, please let me know. But now, guys, means I am a hardcore teacher, so don't approach me to get your work done. I will be there to guide you. I will be there to help you, but I will not be able to do someone else research on their behalf. Okay? So this is my humble request. या आप ये ले लो, आप वो ले लो, आप कुछ मत दो, आपको जो चाहिए मैं फ्री में दूंगा. You do your research at your own. That's it. So that one day you should have a proud that I did my doctoral research, and I'm really proud of my research. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Most
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Anyone has question?
Allow me to.
Sir, 1 minute. Anyone has question? No. Sushil sir, continue.
Yes, please allow me to deliver the vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of this insightful session, it is my privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of everyone present here. First and foremost, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to our domain expert and guide, Dr. Prashant Patil ji, for sharing their valuable insights and expertise with us today. Your knowledge and experience have enlightened us and provided a deeper understanding of the topic. I also extend my thanks to Pune District Education Association's Professor Ramakrishna Moriji, Arts, Commerce and Science College, Akurdi, Pune, for organizing this session and providing us with the platform to learn and engage with such esteemed professionals. I would also like to thank our audience for their active participation and enthusiasm. Your presence and engagement made this session more interactive and meaningful. Thank you once again to everyone who made this session a success. We look forward to seeing you at our future sessions. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Once again, I take this opportunity